Today's webinar will probably last for about 45 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A session. Please save all your questions until that time and use a built-in questions tab to send questions when you have them. We will read those out loud and answer them during the Q&A session. Today's webinar will be recorded as per usual. In a couple of days, we'll make the webinar recording available on Inflectra's YouTube channel under the playlist called Test Automation Demystified. Please note that this webinar playlist is quote-unquote unlisted for the duration of the webinar series. You will need to have a direct link to access the recordings in the playlist. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and get notified every time a new recording is available in the series. At the end of the webinar, we have a quick survey with 2 questions only, and this is for us to get a better idea about whether or not the webinar content was relevant to your needs, and I really hope that you'll take a moment to respond. Now, secondly, for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, this is your first webinar in the series, I just wanted to give you a few key things or key information about the webinar series. As you know, the name of the webinar series is Test Automation Demystified, and this is Inflectra's introductory test automation webinar series. It aims to get testers familiar with test automation, when to use it, how to use it, what skills to develop in order to be able to leverage test automation, and so on. You can learn more about the series by clicking on the URL shown right there on the screen, or it is also included in your handouts available inside the GoToWebinar platform. Additionally, some of you may know that Test Automation Demystified is a certificate course. The series participants are all eligible to get a certificate. And there are some requirements to get a certificate, which is you need to attend the webinar and you need to take short quizzes that come out after the webinar. If you want to get a certificate, you may refer to webinar series certificate rules and frequently asked questions, also linked in your handout. Last but not least, please note that each webinar in the series has a practical part, which is going to be demonstrated using Inflectra's own test automation platform called Repease. I hope you had a chance to take a look at Repease in the past, or if you haven't, you can get all the information you need about it by visiting www.inflectra.com/Repease. There's a 30-day free trial available for you to play with it, and I hope you try it. So now this is all I wanted to tell you, and with this I would like to hand it over to Alexey. Alexey, tell us about friends and foes of software test automation.
Thank you, Thea. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexey. You see me on the screen. Here is some info on me, and let's move on to the webinar topics. So, there are actually just 2 topics for today, friends and foes. I just made 2 pictures to somehow explain what we are going to talk about. So there are a set of things that we should like and set of things that that cause us some troubles, and we will learn how to use the first group to help us with second group. So let's start with friends. And first thing we need to, we need to talk about is what we mean by friends. So this is the picture where we have such a friend. But who is a friend here? So it's not a cat. The cat is actually us. So we are in situation, and we frequently get into that situation where we have to get something inside this room, and the door is locked. When doing UI test automation, we will time after time repeat the same task. We're getting through the locked door, inside something to read something. So we are this cat. We have this need. We need to get inside. So what is the friend in this case? The door itself is locked. Someone didn't think about us. So this door crack right under this door is our friend. So what we are going to talk about today is our friends like these cracks and our fools like this door, and how to use these cracks to bypass such doors. I hope this example is explanatory enough. So first thing, we mostly talk about web and Windows testing. And the thing that usually helps with multiple different tasks is keyboard. And keyboard is much more important than actually mouse. We use mouse a lot in our daily work. Some of us use more keyboard than mouse, but there are many capabilities built into each of these input devices that we actually either don't understand or never use, but they are here. For example, I have mouse in this case. I'm only using mouse input. What happens if I just click on this text? I click once. I just did a click. Nothing happened. Actually, what happened is mouse cursor and focus get into this place where this sign is. So if this place is able to accept focus, it would get it. In this case, there is no focus. It's not a focusable control. Okay, what happens if I do double click in this case? Everyone knows what happens. Maybe many people don't realize that, but they actually know what will happen if they double click here. I'm doing double click. The word gets selected. The word and space after it gets selected. Okay, this is, again, everyone knows. Now the question is, what happens if I do triple click? Many people don't even know that there is a triple click, but it's here. So what happens if I click here 3 times? You may try it yourself, and I'm going to try it myself right now. So I'm doing a triple click, and you see the whole line gets selected. So even such a simple thing as mouse, I'm not using any advanced things like dragging, sliding, any advanced movements or mouse wheel. Just mouse button. One mouse button has some hidden capabilities that is worth to know about. It never hurts to know about them. They may be helpful. Okay, so even simple mouse helps us with that. So it's worth to talk about keyboard. Keyboard has a way more capabilities that are helpful for us. For example, in Windows is really keyboard friendly framework. You may just set your mouse away and try to spend half of an hour trying doing everything that you are usually doing without using mouse. Yes, it's a problem. You will be struggling, but finally you'll find a way. You may live with just keyboard without mouse in Windows. Yeah, that's true. Okay, first of all, first thing everyone knows about is clipboard. We use clipboard all the time. We use these keyboard shortcuts to accept clipboard. So together with things that are helping to select and set focus, clipboard helps to grab information, grab text, grab pictures, and put them somewhere. So it's very strong instrument that we may use in our automation tasks. So keyboard shortcuts for this clipboard and for common tasks are well known. I believe everyone knows of them. I just will illustrate what I mean with some a bit more advanced things. It is menu shortcuts. Most of you, I believe, already know about that, so I just will quickly show what I mean. So there is like typical application. It has a ribbon here. And right now I'm using mouse to access it, but actually I may use keyboard for the same. So for all menu items, I normally may use keyboard to access them. So I'm setting focus on this application, and I'm using this on-screen keyboard to just to make it visible what I'm going to press. So I'm just hitting the Alt button, and you see we see these tips next to menu tabs. So I for image, F for folder, L for album, and so on. So for example, we want to switch to a folder tab, so I'm just hitting F. Now, it also suggests further keystrokes to access individual menu items. For example, I want to add a file, and key combination for that is AF. So I'm just going to click it. You see, Add File dialog shows up. So I managed to go through this ribbon without using mouse at all. So I was only using keyboard. And that's valuable, because if this screen presentation of this control is flexible and it's hard to get coordinates where to click, then keyboard is the simplest way to bypass these complexities. Okay, now let's move on. Keyboard is a topic that has many layers. So there are common key combinations, working with selection, switching between items like Shift tab, Control tab. We are not going to cover them all. I'm just going to tell you that the more you know combinations like that, the more powerful automation things you may do. They never hurts to know more. For example, here is a date picker. This is one of publicly known date picker controls, and many controls like that you will encounter in your life, and you see them every day. So I have it here. I think this one. Okay, so let me show it. So in this particular case, actually I don't need to automate this calendar control because there is a text box, but sometimes this text box is read-only for some reason, or it's displayed just as a calendar. So suppose we have such a situation, so we need to interact with this control. So what we may do? Actually, there is a number of well-known shortcuts. A number of well-known keyboard shortcuts for interacting with date control. Admit, right? So first of all, I have some dates selected. What happens if I click up and down? Up brings me to the previous week. Down lets me go to the next week. Okay, so we have one combination. Left and right is next day, previous day. It's simple. Now, what I did before, when preparing for this webinar, I tried all other combinations. Actually, I tried many different date picker controls in my life. I actually know many combinations that apply to one or other. So usually I first try known, then I try others. So with this picker control, what I found is if you press M, you go to the next month. You see? I'm going to next month. If I hit Shift M, I'm going to previous month. If I hit Y, I go to next year, Shift Y, previous year. And what is also very interesting is T. T is present in many cases. When we press T, we usually get today selected. So this is the way to have today picked by the control. And this sometimes helps to select specific date. So you hit T, you know where your control are. And then you add a month, as many months as needed, then you add as many years as needed, and so on. So you select specific date. Sometimes it's helpful. Okay, so with this control, I think the situation is clear. Now let's go to next one. Let's look at worst case. So we have another control here. This is a calendar control, so it doesn't have date picker, and we cannot just access its internals. I tried different key combinations, and this is an example of bad case. Nothing helps here. So I'm pressing cursor keys. I'm pressing every keys on the keyboard. There is no reaction from this control. So in this particular case, it's a bad case. We already considered this control on my previous webinar, webinar number 2. So we may still interact with it. We may still set and read date, but keyboard is not available in this case. So it may be everything good, everything may be good, everything may be not so good, but it always worth to try to know what are capabilities with this application. Also, if you have access to development team, you also may go to them. If no keys work, like in this case, you may come to them and say, hey, key combinations work everywhere. Why they don't work in your case? For example, they work in Windows exactly in the same way as I just explained. So you may go up, down, left, right. You may zoom out to the month and year view and zoom back. So this date control also completely controllable. So dear developers, why don't you fix your control? So this is a way to convince them that this should work properly. So as an argument. Okay, next our friend is APIs. All APIs are always good. More APIs, better. For example, here is the REST API. It's available in many web applications as well as in many desktop applications. Let me show you how we use this REST API to automate one of third-party desktop applications. So we needed to automate AS400 terminal. It's green screen. It's remote terminal, and we needed to work with it some way. So let me launch this test and stop it. So we have this. So terminal is here. So this is green screen. We need to log in. We may do something. And if we just try to spy it, we cannot get really meaningful information from this window because it's custom terminal. But this terminal, what's good about it is that it has a REST API interface. So here is the terminal window. And here is the URL that exposes the interface for this terminal application. So if I go here, this is what reported from this terminal. It has REST entry point, it has text entry point, and the text returns status from this terminal. I may do, for example, move cursor operation. So it has documentation. I'm not going to dive into it, but it has move cursor, and I may point at some specific place. You see, it's at point 1010. Or it may be used to, for example, print text. And this outputs text view from this terminal. And finally, to make a long story short, we enabled all these entry points to interact with this terminal, and we implemented a set of functions that we use. And now we may just write scripts, test scripts with this terminal interacting with this AS400 instance. So the script just accesses this terminal, enters username, password, anything. You see, doing something, checking something, reads screens, checks values, and so on. So it's automating. So REST API is good. Now, next example is SOAP and ActiveX and COM APIs. In RPs, we have a number of built-in samples. So very great examples of ActiveX interface is using Microsoft Excel. It's a built-in sample. You may just open it, and if you have Excel, you may just run it. So it demonstrates how internal API of Excel may be used. And you may do, I think, everything with Excel by using it. We have similar sample for using Microsoft Word. And again, this allows to access things that you cannot access easily anywhere else. So this is very powerful approach. I don't have Excel here on this virtual machine, so I will not be executing it. Next example of the API is database access. Of course, if we have direct access to database, we have much more powerful. And first thing that comes to our mind is a validation. When you need to check something like ID of the entry or some status, and if you have ability to go to database and check it, that may be the fastest and simplest way to do it. Also, sometimes the script contains part like data feed when you, for example, need to enter information about like 50 patients to be able to check the search for patients. So database is very valuable for this case. In Europes, again, there is a built-in sample for accessing database called using database. Just a second. Using database, sorry, getting blind. Again, it's more detailed examples. It shows how you may connect, how you may use ADO query and so on. Next, our friend is command line. Sometimes command line is the simplest way to do something. For example, simple use cases, Chrome, you may use command. It has a lot of command line keys. You may learn about them. We have a link here. You may, in this command line entry, runs Chrome in incognito mode with a specific position, with specific window size. So it may be done this way, and this fastest way to launch it. Okay. URL authentication. Sometimes you have basic authentication on the side. This is a small box that shows here in the top of the screen asking you to enter username as password. That it's built into the browser. Sometimes it's really hard to pass through it if you, for example, execute in headless or Selenium mode. So there is a workaround for that, and many people actually don't know about that. That's surprising. So you may pass this basic auth information this way. So it goes as username, then comma, and password, and then the URL you are going to use. This is the simplest way to bypass it. So just good to know about that. Sometimes it's helpful. URL parameters. It's really easy to demonstrate. In this case, I just hit the Google Apps login screen, and you may see that language that it's displayed. It's actually locale specific. This VM is somewhere in Netherlands, and it's displayed in the Dutch language out of the box. So I need to probably do this switch to English first to move on. Luckily, if I learn a bit this application, I will know that there is a URL parameter that I may use. It's called HL, and then language code that I want to use for this application. You see, it became English. So if you know that, you prepared, you may easily bypass this language switch. So that it will make hard things simpler. Now, entry point URL. This example is let me good to demonstrate with Microsoft Dynamics. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to enter default URL for Microsoft Dynamics. It's main ASPX. It will first navigate to login screen. In this case, I already did login just to fasten this approach. So where you get with main is a sort of dashboard, and it lists the number of installed applications. Normally, what we test one of these applications or one of the sections within this application. So usually, if we need to go to contacts, we need to go to Sales pub, then we select contacts, and then we may start some testing activities. So the simpler way to bypass this preliminary selection and save time for that is if I just copy this URL as is, and I will start my navigation right from this point. So I will just use this one, this URL to begin. It has application ID, and this is what I actually need. And from the first step, I appear at the place where I need my testing activity to perform. Even if I'm not logged in, it will show login prompt, normal login prompt. I'll enter details, and anyway, I'll be redirected to this place. So this is a way to shorten the test scripts and to get to the right point quicker. One more example is command line switches for entering, opening a document. So instead of doing file open, in many cases you may pass file name to open or profile name to open or URL to open as a command line parameter. Again, it usually saves you from at least one operations like file, menu open. Configuration files. One more friend. It's not so evident why and when you need it, but it's good to know that there is such kind of configuration file. So again, good examples is Microsoft Unified Service Desk. So if I just click here, it will launch the application. But let me first check what's there inside. So I see it starts in this folder. This is an application folder. So let me use this folder. Just go there and have a look. So my application, not my, but application I'm going to check is this. It's here. And here is the config file. It's situated next to this application. I just have it open here. We're not going to use it right now, but it's good to know that it's here. Oh, let me return some configuration. Later, we will return to this application and we'll see how it helps us. So this is, I return to default configuration. So we know about this, we armed, and we wait for time to use it. Next friend is synchronization markers. Usually they're small, they're tiny, but it's always good to watch for them. Good example is, for example, this search. There is a search box, and if I type something that I'm going to search on this machine, you will see that search operation is performing. And if I'm automating a task like that, I actually need to know if it's still searching or it is done searching, right? So the first indicator that I see here is this progress bar. So what I need to learn this progress bar, and I need to see its status, its current status. If I manage to see it, then I may implement a function to wait for enough time for specific for the search to end. So, for example, my goal is to find out how many items are found. So I need to wait for the search end to then check how many items are here. We will return to this example later because it has some hidden troubles, and we will resolve them, and that would be a happy end. Macros and scripting. Many tools have scripting, has some built-in application configuration capabilities. Microsoft has a VBA everywhere. Google has its own scripting. So, for example, inside the Google spreadsheets, there is extra script editor for built-in macros. So this is all good to know that it is here because it may be useful. Log files, always helpful. Log files may contain exceptions. They may contain synchronization status. So sometimes we may only see that something is finished or failed from the log file. Otherwise, it's hard to understand what's happening on the screen. It may have some unique IDs and values that we need for our testing. So log file is good to know. If application has a log file, where is the log file? Does it save something to system event viewer or to some file, or to know file location where it saves? Import and export. Again, in many cases, there are buttons like export to CSV, export to Excel, import from something. If we have such operation, that may simplify our testing tasks, because instead of entering values one by one, we may simply import something in one step and then move on to test. That's all about friends. Not all, more friends, but that's enough to give you a picture how many different cracks are there around that we may use. Now, let's go to the dark side to talk about fools. And first one is, of course, captcha. So if site has recaptcha like that, we are in trouble. Actually, the captcha is designed so that no automatic way should be there to bypass it. So its goal to make sure you are not a robot, so you are a user. So it's the only way to bypass it is a manual way. So workaround proposed by reCAPTCHA developers is a special version of the same login page or entry point where the site key is set to something, to predefined value. Actually, the value is here. And if site key is set to this value, it's internal in the application sources, then there is a secret key that you type in the reCAPTCHA value and it will let you pass in. I'm leaving the link here to the Google site that explains this approach. Probably this is the only reliable workaround, and it requires you to deal with development team, but that's what we have in this case. Asynchronous behavior. This is a big trouble in many cases. So again, return to this use case with search. So let me open a test I have prepared, not test but test project, to show you the troubles we have. So I'm going to do recording. Close this. Sorry, second. Not here, not here. It's here. Okay, I closed it. Okay, we have one search window. I'm going to start recorder and spy. We are recording this application. I'm starting spy. Well, suppose we doing this search just like I did it. So the search is in progress. You see this green line is here. I'm tracking this control. So my findings was that there is no status. So what is it complete or not? You cannot get it from any properties of this control. So the only way probably to find where the if green line reached some point here, which is also a bit like weird solution. So this progress bar in this case is kind of fake friend. It's friend for user, but we need to search more and find something more reliable. And we may easily find it here. This close button, you see, it only appears if you do search several times. You will see that it only available here while search is in progress. So this is our true friend in this case. And when the search is done, you see it's changed with refresh button. So the reliable way here is to check that close button is on the screen, then search is in progress, and then search is done. We may wait for this refresh button to appear. This would mean that the search is done. So this is the best way for synchronization in this case. Then we need to count how many items were found. One way is to try to figure it out from this list, learn this list. It may work, it may not, but there is, again, simpler way is this title bar. I may try to track it. Come on, something bad with the spy. Anyway, this is learnable it's learnable item. So the simplest way is to wait for this refresh button to appear and then read the number from here and get exact number of items that were found. So in this case, the test will be synchronous. It will wait just enough time. It will not be flaky. So this is the right way for synchronization. So these tiny things like this refresh button are our friends in this case. Obfuscation is another trouble. It's big trouble. Obfuscation is a way when application gets minimized, its IDs, identifiers, class names are minimized. I put this comparison here, maybe a bit little, but I hope the idea is you see the class name here and here are something not readable, it's not human readable, and they change. These are two consequent versions of Gmail. So the same email yesterday had this class, and the same email message today has this class. So this is because Google has frequent deployments. And if what we should know here, if this kind of obfuscation is used, we shouldn't rely on class names, and we also cannot rely on IDs. So solution here is to apply resilient pathways. We have separate lectures. I put the link to this lecture in the article for this webinar session, and I hope you will find it useful if you have the problem like this one. Next issue is Canvas. Again, it's a common issue. Canvas is an HTML5 element that allows advanced drawing of controls, and more elements nowadays are using it. For example, we have this sample. So this is a grid control, and it's using Canvas. And the fact that it's using Canvas means for us that if we try to track it, we only see single element for the whole grid. We see nothing inside it. So we cannot somehow dig into its details, find out how many columns are here, how many rows, what is the current row cell. This is all hidden. So Canvas is a disaster for this control like that. And the more bad news is that Google Spreadsheet also using Canvas. So it uses the similar approach. Previously, it was using different approach, but like years ago, they switched it to Canvas. So it's again a black box. We cannot learn specific cell or specific row here. The good news about Google, again, we have friends here. We have the scripting that we were talking about earlier. Also, we have keyboard, and there is a big help topic about keyboard shortcuts. Really many of them, you see, they split into groups. For example, if I need to get data from this grid, what I need to know is, suppose I have this grid, I need to get its data. Let me use just keyboard. I don't know why it's switching here. Okay, keyboard. So what happens if I press Control-A? You see, it selects only the field part of the grid, so only values. And that's very good, because if I now do copy and go to Notepad, it will contain just the data from this grid. I may easily parse it and use values like that. I may create new window and paste. And this is data from this particular grid. So one friend is here to help. Just for information, this Control-A behaves differently. If I just click somewhere else and do Control-A, you see it select the whole grid. So we need to know these details to work effectively with such kind of situation. One more friend is here. Just like Microsoft Excel, Google has REST API. Excel has ActiveX API. Google has REST API, and this API provides access to read and write data from the grid to very deep details. So you may find links to these reference topics to it and use it. So it's really good testable overall, due to availability of that friends. Also, it has export and import from the menu. It's another friend that should help us. And final example for today is a Chrome embedded framework. there is a grant application that is going to demonstrate us this trouble. So I'm running Unified Service Desk, and what we found out like a couple of maybe a year ago, Microsoft enabled an option where Unified Service Desk may use Chromium embedded framework in the background to render its controls. And Chromium embedded framework, it's a subset of the Chrome browser, actually developed by Google, but it's an open source version. And the bad news about Chromium embedded framework, if we just try to spy it, nothing here is visible. You see, it's like a black box. Everything in this grid, no single elements from within this grid are highlighted. If I stop spying and look, you see it's Chrome legacy window. It's true for all Chrome embedded framework applications. So unfortunately, what we know is that if you have desktop application with CAF, Chrome embedded framework, you're in trouble. It's really hard to automate. And let's remember that we found one friend in this case. There is a config file. Some Googling, some checking. We found that there is an option to disable and to use other ways to render controls in the same application. So I have this config file open. I already have this option selected. So there is an option saying that it wants to use Chrome as a rendering engine. I'm going just to remove this option and save. Now I'm launching the same application. Need to wait a bit. And this is where we need to synchronize if we're testing an application like that. You see how long it takes to launch. And that's why we need to know how to navigate to right point from the beginning. We need to know how to synchronize. Okay, so the same application with different config file, the same SPI. Let's now have a look. You see, all individual items are now visible, so it may be automated with much more success in this case. So we found a friend that helps us in this case. So I hope that was an example that boldened the importance to know that minor details like config files. So let's summarize. I will skip bullets. So idea of the summary is here on this picture. So this picture has a title, Find a Cat. So there is a cat. So all we know that he is here. The question is, where is it? So the trick with this picture is that if you already found it once, if you know that where the cat is, then you are immediately seeing it. So when you see this picture, you immediately see where is the cat. But if you didn't find it yet, then it looks like there is no cat, and it's really hard to find him here. The same situation we have with these friends and fools. If you know they are here, and if you were able to find them before, you will find a way how to apply them. You see them immediately. So if your eye is trained to see them, you will find them, and they will help you. Otherwise, if you like for the first time, of course, you will be struggling to get this information. But when you more or less familiar, you are successful. You will find them. They will help you. So basically, that's all I was going to show you. I hope that was interesting. I welcome you to the next webinar session that will be held by my colleague Denis Markovtsev. It's devoted to codeless test automation. It's a webinar number 5 in our series, and it will show you the concept of codeless test automation that's embedded deeply into the RAPs, and it's intended to simplify your daily work when you're doing automation. If you have any questions, you're welcome. You find this information on how to access me on the screen. And it's the end of my speech. Thank you for your attention.
Again, our next webinar is scheduled for July 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern, and it will talk about codeless test automation, and it will be showing that on the example of repeats. Thank you again. Thank you for participating. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our presenters and Denise. And everybody have a great week.